Hi, my name is Ben, aka Nightingale TCG, and over the weekend I went to the Barcelona regional, so I thought why not talk a little bit about the journey and the event in general while some of the stuff I've been filming is rolling in the background. First things first, I'm not a vlogger, never really done much filming before, so if any of the footage is a little bit choppy, I'm sorry about that. Hopefully over time I'll be able to document my journeys more often and I'll get better at it. But for now you're gonna be stuck with me just whipping out my phone every now and then and trying to create somewhat of a continuous story. I live in the UK, which means I had to take a 2.5 hour train to the airport first, where because I'm someone who hates being late, I typically end up way too early and spend a solid amount of time just mooching around. In this case, most of that time was spent in the Lego store. I got to look around at some of the Star Wars and One Piece builds. I actually own the Mary and the Barate, which were like a lot of fun to build, and I'm excited to build the new ones that are supposed to come out this year, I think. I know there's one of Garb's Marine ship that I've pre-ordered. And after doing that for a bit, it was basically already time to head to the gate. Usually whenever I travel, especially by plane, I like to just pop on my headphones and read for most of it. It was a bit more than a 2-hour flight. I brought Will of the Many, which my girlfriend has been telling me to read, and you know the rules. If I want her to continue reading One Piece, I'm gonna have to read some of her recommendations too. The book's main magic system is based on Will, which is essentially the same as Haki in One Piece, so that's already intriguing. I'm not super far into it yet, but I'm enjoying it a lot at the moment. I landed in Barcelona where I met up with my friends who flew in from Luxembourg. Annoyingly, our planes arrived at 2 different terminals, so I had to grab a bus first to meet up with them at the other side of the airport. And from there, we then ordered an Uber to get us to the venue so that the ones in our group who had a regional ticket could already get checked in. Sadly, I wasn't one of them. I only managed to secure a Treasure Cup ticket online, but I knew that the next morning the organizers were planning to re-release the tickets for those who would cancel theirs or simply didn't show up, so I still had a little bit of hope. We then took another Uber to our Airbnb where we had to wait for the owner to show up and give us the keys, so we decided to have a little sit down at a corner cafe where we had a drink and my friends opened their participation packs. The actual Airbnb was really nice as well, nothing to complain about. It was on the 9th floor of an apartment complex which gave us a great view over Sabadell, and the balcony was just a cozy spot to have a pizza for dinner as well. We ended the evening with some minor playtesting and then headed to bed to get enough rest for the next morning. The next day at the venue, we were handed a QR code to scan where they would re-release tickets for the regional. The thing about it was that at the moment where the tickets were released, everyone who was on the website got randomly thrown into a queue, and the moment it updated for me, I was something like 200th in line, so there was no chance at all for me to get a ticket. The other friend of our group sadly was just as unlucky, so the two of us were just stuck playing side events for the day, or so we thought. Because for whatever reason, the organizers decided that instead of running side events all day on demand like every other regional, and then firing them the moment 64 players are signed up, that instead they'd only run 3 side events every 3 hours, but still at 64 player cap. Which meant that my friend and I were once again left to the fate of the random queue to decide whether we get tickets or not. And as luck will have it, neither of us got any tickets for the first 2 side events. We were debating on whether we should just call it quits and spend the day in Barcelona, which honestly in hindsight I think we should have done. but we also wanted to stick around and support our friends who were playing the regional, and we both just wanted to play. The worst part about all of this was that during the first 3 rounds, there literally was no space to sit down, and this wasn't because the venue was like too small or anything to fit more seats and tables. The organizers simply decided not to do it. So we had to wait 3 rounds until some people dropped to finally be able to like find some tables to do a little bit more playtesting or playing some games for fun, because I needed some Sanji time. We finished the day by getting some all-you-can-eat sushi as a group, which was a lot of fun, and then headed back to the Airbnb. I did in the end manage to get 1 ticket for the very last side event of the day, where I went 3-1, only losing to Nami, which, considering I didn't feel super confident going into this event, felt like a fine result. And sadly, none of my friends who played the regional did better than X3. The next day it was then finally time for me to play the Treasure Cup. Like I just mentioned, I was not feeling super confident going into this event. Like, if you compare it with Bonn, where my confidence was at a 10 out of 10, this was more like a 3. I do like my pick in Calgaro, but I do recognize as well that it has its limitations in the current meta. It has basically a 50-50 matchup versus Enel, which is fine, but it's also dice roll dependent, and versus Nami you are unfavored, but there are ways to navigate the matchup. My hope was that with the increase of Nami's popularity in the past few regionals, that more people would play Lucy in order to counter it, which is a very favored matchup for me, and therefore it would like balance itself out in the end. And then there's the one half of the I want to call them fringe meta decks like Sky Luffy and Black Crocodile, which actually got 2nd place in the entire event. Like, Calgaro should be favored into them. The problem for Calgaro are the other half of the fringe meta decks like Ace and Red Green Luffy, but I also had a plan against them and how to find winnable game states. So even though I was feeling unconfident, I still had hope, if that makes sense. Game 1, Green Bonnie. I can't lie, I was annoyed seeing that because in the past it was incredibly difficult for Calgaro, but now with Akos Kit being gone, the matchup felt a lot more manageable, so I got the win. He only had 1 Luna. If he maybe would have seen 2 back to back, it could have been hard. But Viper and Zeus were MVPs in that game despite him getting an early Laboon down. Game 2 was versus a pretty good Nami player who just bubbled out of Top Cut the previous day. I lost dice roll, and going 2nd, typically my strategy is to play 10 cost NL and Rygo and try to outsustain my opponent, but I didn't find either card, so I had to switch my approach into being as aggressive and as fast as possible, which usually only works going fast. Luckily, after blowing up their girl with Viper, my opponent was so bricked that he didn't feel confident to play out 7 cost Robin without a Don underneath his leader, which meant 1 less life for me to chew through. In the end, it came down to whether or not my opponent had Zeus in hand to blow up my Borsellino to go for lethal, but he only drew Rayleigh, which was too big of a Don investment to get past my hand, so we took game 2. Game 3 was Sky Luffy. I was simply way too fast, too quickly for them to do anything. They played a 5-cost Calgaro out with the hope to get enough resources to out-sustain the onslaught of attacks they had going, but I kept countering out of my life, which typically I don't like doing as Calgaro, but here it was very good because I could deny them the draw. And now is where the depression starts. Game 4 was versus Ace. I lost dice, but I managed to navigate the early game well, keeping his board clear and preventing him to Jozu me. I even had Rygo for his first 10 drop. The problem was that he simply had everything. He played 8-cost spell into 8-cost spell. Maybe if I had a Rygo for the 2nd new gate, I could have won, but it's too rare to see both in a game. And then he played 7-cost Zoro into Taxbeard in a spot where I only had 3 cards in hand into another 7-cost Zoro, essentially preventing me from ever attacking him efficiently throughout the entirety of the game. I needed him to miss 1 turn where he couldn't buff himself to 8, but it didn't happen, so that was my first loss. And then the universe said, hey, you know what's worse than playing into a leader that's constantly 8k? What about a leader that's constantly 9k? How the hell am I finding a Roger in this meta when I'm 3-1? But regardless, I played the game to the best of my ability, and I got very close to winning again. I only lost because my opponent top-decked an 8-cost Roger to buff himself again. Which at that point, you know, like, what can you do? I still felt alright after that, because despite how close the games were, there were matchups I was supposed to lose. We then had a 1 hour lunch break, which I always hate during regionals because I don't like eating in between games and it also just simply takes me out of the flow. And after that, I was dealt with the most disgusting screw you by the matchups gods imaginable. Green, freeze Zoro. What? Who the hell plays that, man? Like, I look to my left and right and I see Odie, Lucy, Nami and both colors of Enel and I get hit with Freeze Zoro. And as luck would have it, I was also dealt an incredibly unplayable hand and that was the least close loss all day. And sadly that was it for the day. I dropped, went back to the apartment exhausted and disappointed, fell asleep, which is why I haven't filmed anything else for that day. All that was left was a journey home, and despite the low expectations, it was sadly still a disappointing weekend from a competitive standpoint. I did manage to trade for Dodgers and a BVB Luffy, which was nice, and I had a good time with my friends, which made the weekend not a complete waste. I'll be playing the Venice Treasure Cup in 2 weeks, so I'll try again there. I'm not 100% sure yet whether I'll stick with Calgaro or not, but I still think he's not that bad of a choice if you don't want to play Nami or Purple Enel. And I think I just got very unlucky not seeing a single Purple Enel or Lucy in those 6 first games, and even worse, I saw a Roger and a Zoro. I hope you enjoyed watching this little vlog and listening to my recap of the tournament. Hopefully in the future I can deliver this content and do well too, so I have something to celebrate, but for now all I can do is try again. Let me know what you think of this vlog, any suggestions, any improvements you'd want me to make. As I said at the start, this is literally my first attempt at content like this, but I'll strive to do better. Apart from that, I wish you a good rest of your day and I'll be back with gameplay in 2 days.